So welcome to everybody joining the webinar. We're really happy to have you here today. Apologies for the slight delay in getting started. Hi, everyone. Just giving it a couple of minutes as people join, and then we can get started. Okay. I think we have quite a few folks that have joined us here today, so I think we can get started. Welcome, everyone, to our webinar, Understanding and Supporting Community-Led Education in Sudan. We are so excited to be having this conversation and really happy that we've all gathered here today to continue this discussion. Next slide, please. I wanted to start us off with a few welcome and housekeeping notes. The first thing to note is that Arabic interpretation is available. Please use the interpretation icon at the bottom of your Zoom window to access Arabic live interpretation. Please choose the language that you are comfortable in, and our interpretation team will make sure that you understand and are able to access all of the discussion being had today. The second point here is that we welcome your questions. Although this is a webinar, we will have a pretty substantial Q&A section towards the end of our webinar. So please do use the Q&A box at the bottom of the Zoom window to access to share your questions and direct them towards any particular panelists or presenters at any time. A third note to say that this webinar is being recorded and that the recording and any associated materials will be posted to the INEE website at the end of the event. And finally, say hello. Please feel free to introduce yourself and connect with colleagues through the chat. So, with those first few welcome and housekeeping notes, next slide, please. I wanted to officially introduce myself as well as my co-host for the day. My name is Shreya Sriraman. I'm the Research Uptake Coordinator at INEE, and my role focuses on making sure that the latest research and new evidence is accessible and usable to INEE's network members and the EIE sector at large. My co-host Ayman Kader is the MENA regional lead at INEE and has been very active in managing our Arabic language community, as well as all of our Arabic language work and contextualization efforts over the past few years. And together we will co-host this discussion for you today. Next slide, please. Before we jump into the agenda for today, I wanted to take a moment to really acknowledge Sudan and the context of Sudan. I know that we often tend to talk about this crisis and this situation in terms of data and statistics, and we will get to that later in this webinar. But I also wanted to acknowledge the spirit of our gathering today, which is really to uplift and acknowledge the voices of the community members that are really driving education efforts in Sudan at the moment. The quote that I have here is from one of our members based in Sudan, Yusuf, who was part of our Sudan crisis advocacy efforts previously and has called on the international community to study, map, and really document the ways in which teachers and community members are coming together to use international best practice and evidence alongside community mechanisms and structures for supporting education. And there's a call here to acknowledge this as a nation rebuilding itself from within. That's a really powerful quote, and I wanted to start with this to set the tone for our webinar today and to once again draw attention to the fact that the reason for gathering here today is really to understand how we can better support these actors at the community level, at the grassroots levels that are really pushing the work forward in terms of education provision. So with that, next slide, please. I'd like to run us through our agenda for today. We will begin with a research presentation by Dr. Rebecca Glade, who will present the key insights from her research paper, Learning Through Crisis, Community-Based Education in Sudan. This will then be followed by a panel discussion moderated by myself and my colleague Ayman. We will hear here from journalist Osama Abdel, who works in Sudan and covers several important community-led initiatives, including education. Abuzar Osman, who works with the Localization Coordination Committee, which coordinates international support towards the ERRS in Sudan. Heiba Osman, who works at Sadagaat organization, which is a national organization working on several education initiatives in Sudan. Rihab Abdalla Osman works at Save the Children to provide us with a perspective from somebody working on education from an INGO perspective. And finally, Yasir El-Hag, who plays a really important role in coordinating humanitarian efforts through the local education group and is based in UNESCO Sudan. So we hope that this panel discussion will be interesting, meaningful, and a rich dialogue, sharing perspectives from many different viewpoints and bringing different kinds of expertise to the discussion today. After the panel discussion, we will move on to the audience Q&A, and this is really the space for you all, our attendees, to share your questions and to interact with the panelists through the Q&A box and the chat, and we will then close and flag any key resources for you. So with that, I look forward to once again hearing from the panelists and from all of you in the Q&A, and I would love to hand over now to our research presentation by Dr. Rebecca Glade. Dr. Rebecca Glade is a visiting scholar at Makerere University, and she will be joined by Ed Barney, who works at the FCDO Sudan office as the Human Development Lead. So over to you, Rebecca and Ed.
I'm pausing to Ed. I think you were starting off, so the floor is open.
I think we just might have a slight delay from Ed. Hi, Ed. I think we've just been able to add you as a panelist, so we would love to hear from you.
Hi, Shreya. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
I am
Please
so
go ahead.
sorry. It took me a
No
while to,
worries at all.
to
Please go ahead.
rearrange as a panelist. Look, I'm not going to say much because Rebecca is incredibly intelligent and insightful, and I don't want to eat into that time. All I wanted to do was acknowledge that the FCDO, the UK British Office for Sudan, is very proud to have supported this research. We're very glad to have partnered with IRC and INEE. And we're very grateful to someone called Lisa Walker, who was an education advisor with our office, for initiating this work. What feels like a long time ago, but I think it was only around 6 months ago. The key thing I wanted to acknowledge as a donor in this discussion is that we hold our hands up and explicitly accept the fact that we've been very slow as funders of humanitarian and development work in Sudan since the conflict started to pivot towards a meaningful and structural, locally led response in terms of our funding and partnerships to actors in Sudan. And I do feel fair enough to say that that's a position and constraint that many other donors, particularly multilateral funders in Sudan, also face that challenge. And I hope that this research and information helps to tackle a knowledge gap around how you can effectively support community-led education initiatives across Sudan, how they operate, how they're financed, and critically how they contribute to learning continuity. And then I hope that we do see this meaningful pivot in funding a response that really empowers these locally led actors. So I'm not going to say any more, and I'll hand over to Rebecca to present the research.
Thank you very much, Ed, and thank you to everyone attending. I also want to thank my co-researcher for this report, Ariana Pacifico, who I know is here and who was instrumental as well in the writing of this report. This report is a first attempt to look at community education initiatives in Sudan, how they operate, how they work, with an eye to how external organizations and donors can support them with a knowledge of how they operate themselves. And with that, I think we can move to the next slide. So, I mean, it's important to understand the scale of the problem when it comes to education in Sudan since the outbreak of war in 2023. The state-run education system has faced existential challenges, which are evident in the sort of stats on this slide. 8 million children having lost 500 days of learning since 2023, a GDP fall of 40%, public spending fell by 25%, and education share of public spending fell to 1 to 2% of that budget. Novice teachers are earning about $350 a month. The highest salaries for teachers is $30 a month due to inflation and the salaries not rising, and when they're paid at all. And an estimated 1/3 of Sudan's teachers have left the country, and even more have left the profession. So this is really an existential threat to education systems. If we can go to the next slide. But it can be seen as a tragedy, and there are a lot of tragic aspects to this, as in any war or conflict. But communities aren't passive recipients of education. They're its architects, financiers, and its leaders. And that's evident through the initiatives that they've created. If we go to the next slide. This research and this report relies on 10 semi-structured interviews with about 14 people directly involved in community-led education initiatives. The interviews were involving people involved in initiatives across 6 conflict-affected states in North and East Darfur, West and South Kordofan, Sennar, and Blue Nile. Roughly half of those we interviewed were current or former teachers, which is consistent with these initiatives being led by educators themselves often. And interviews were held remotely via WhatsApp, Signal, and Google Meets. We also reviewed Sudanese civil society, academic and gray literature, plus Arabic language journalism. Now, there are some key limitations to this research. It was a rapid study, and we could only make use of remote interviews given the conflict and access questions. Also, most of those that we spoke with were men. And this is a great irony because the majority of teachers in Sudan before the war and probably after the war are women. And many of those volunteering in these initiatives are women. However, women tend not to be the first to be given to external people, and they tend to not be at the forefront or spokespeople, which means that there are fewer women that we were able to reach in the time available. With that, we can go to the next slide. Now, community education initiatives are doing a lot of things. Volunteer initiatives and community initiatives in general are doing a lot of things in Sudan. But the 2 most prominent ways that community initiatives have been working on education involve in reviving government schools, or ostensibly government schools, and the creation and maintenance of khalawi. So when we're talking about reviving government schools, communities are often opening previously existing government schools in the locations that they had existed previously. This involves a fair amount of labor and material reconstruction for the schools themselves. They tend to have the same age groups and the same pre-war curriculum, but with fewer textbooks and materials to work with. Many of these schools charge fees to the students of between 5,000 and 10,000 Sudanese pounds a month. which is about $3. And these can be prohibitive, but different initiatives have thought of ways around that, whether waiving fees for those who are displaced or delaying when and how often they ask for the fees. But I mean, that varies from place to place. Meanwhile, Khalawi have also been a critical site for education initiatives. Traditional Khalawi are built around Quranic study and often have a residential and work component in the masjid, where most who come to study work and then live and then study as well. Since these have continued and have often expanded operations, taking in students who come externally, while simultaneously there's been a growth in small-scale Khalawi, most prominently in North Darfur, where students live off-site and they come on a daily basis, and they tend to study as well, in addition to Quran, Arabic and math. These are mixed classes with up to 200 students. They also are often fee-based, especially when they're not residential, with slightly lower fees than that of the government schools. Now, all of these rely on volunteer teacher labor and take fees, volunteer labor, but we'll talk a bit more about the role of volunteers and volunteer labor a little bit later. With that, we can go to the next slide. Now, it's important to understand that each initiative starts and is space-specific, rooted in a particular location where the needs have been assessed. But these initiatives are network-based and they communicate across initiatives, and there are a lot of developments of coordination across an area, across a region, across a whole state. It's important in understanding that these networks are means of coordination, sharing resources, information, advice, but not necessarily of control. They don't give orders. Also, it's worth noting that these initiatives are drawing on longstanding traditions of community organization, and they operate in an ecosystem involving a lot of volunteer networks that aren't just about education, and that there's not often strict barriers between different initiatives in that sense. All of these initiatives rely on social trust. Communities organize resources and mobilize resources and labor after coming to a wide consensus on the problem and the need for an initiative and what's needed to do it, and then soliciting contributions, and then proceeding to implement it. They also involve regular communication back to the communities involved. This often is through informal reporting in social media and WhatsApp groups involving photos of receipts, updates on work done. And these things really help people to understand, even if they're not volunteering on a daily basis, what's happening. And all of these initiatives are volunteer sustained. Teachers are often both the organizers and the workforce for them. And they all are functioning largely unpaid, even when salaries exist. I've noted earlier how low these salaries are. They aren't at a level of base life subsistence, much less a good life. People aren't doing this for the money then. They're doing it because they want these initiatives to exist. They often receive in-kind donations of various things from communities, as well as sort of chunks of funds when available. But it's not some regular form of income. And when resources run short, these initiatives tend to pause and solicit more support and reconvene rather than collapsing. One interlocutor told me, we announce what we need to do something, and if we don't have it by the Friday, then we announce that and we wait another week and we do it the next Friday. So this is sort of the approach to mobilizing and maintaining these initiatives. So with that, next slide. Now, if we could have the tech, okay. Now, these initiatives operate in an incredibly polarized political environment, and initiatives are subject to whatever power is in the area that they operate within. This means that they have to work in coordination with whichever armed party controls an area and otherwise are subject to serious risk and really couldn't function. This, in practice, also risks co-optation by the powers when they're successful as propaganda pieces, as well as if an area changes hands from one armed party to another, accusations of collaboration. Now, there also, this is most evident in questions of salaries. Since the war broke out, the Port Sudan government has paid some teachers in RSF areas their salaries on the condition that they not teach in schools in that area. In response, the RSF has targeted teachers who collect that pay, and this really puts teachers in the crosshairs of both armed parties, and education is ultimately a weapon, another weaponized item used by the armed parties, ultimately with the population and teachers and students as victims. If we could add the next text to this suspicion cuts both ways as well. When co-optation is not an option, both armed parties view these initiatives as potentially subversive and attempt to co-opt, if they don't co-opt them, hinder them through a sort of NGOification, creating a sort of legislative framework or a set of rules requiring a type of reporting, a type of organization and structure that is really difficult for most initiatives to do in order to effectively shut them down. Now, another example of the ways that this has played out is in the question of national secondary school exams. This is something that the Federal Ministry of Education has operated prior to the war, and since the war, the federal ministry has only done so in SAF-controlled, Sudanese Armed Forces-controlled areas with no efforts to arrange for students in RSF-controlled areas to gain access to these exams, meaning that students in those areas have not had a national exam for 3 years. The RSF this year organized a separate set of exams, which creates its own challenges and has the potential to further divide the country. The next bit. And there's another issue and challenge involving varied levels of access to resources and capacity. Different areas of Sudan have had different access to education over its history, meaning that since this outbreak of war, different areas have fewer or more individuals who have gone through secondary school and university and have organizational skills and intimate knowledge of the resources necessary to operate these and mobilize these sort of initiatives. So this creates its own set of inequalities as well. With that, next slide. Now, I'm not going to go if we could put all the recommendations on the screen, it would be great. Because I'm not going to go too much into the recommendations. My goal here is to highlight that this report, and I want to refer you to the report, but the main initiative recommendations are on the screen, involving adopting a flexible context-specific support models rather than a uniform state or national approaches, effective support requiring localizing decision-making, like aligning support with community-based practice and prioritize downward accountability, support for community, while advocating state responsibility for education, defending initiatives under attack by rival governments, and supporting women's leadership are all key points. These recommendations are very much in keeping with other calls for localization and Sudanese civil society's advice on what they need. And I'm happy to discuss that more in the discussion. But and with that, I think final slide. This webinar is not just about the report. I'm excited to hear the thoughts of those who are working in the education sphere after me, who can speak to the initiatives and the ways that these operate in Sudan. And I'm really excited for the conversation to follow. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, for sharing the insightful research. And I'm excited, like you, exactly to bring in the panelists. Thank you again for bringing the attention to the important lessons emerging from this important research, learning through crisis, community-based education in Sudan. We have shared the resource in the chat box, so feel free to check it. As Rebecca indicated, this presentation has highlighted ways that communities are continuing to organize, continuing to support learning, and also to respond to the education crisis despite extremely difficult circumstances. With that, now we will move into our highly interesting panel discussion, which we will further explore the issues that Rebecca has flagged in the research. We will have it from different perspectives. We have journalists, community-led initiative, civil society organization, international organization, and also humanitarian coordination. And we're really pleased to have a distinguished group of panelists with us today. I'd like to invite Osama, Abuzar, Heiba, and Rihab, and Yasir to come on camera with us, please, if you're comfortable with that. And each panelist will basically have approximately 5 minutes to share their insight on the question. So and we hope this will be more of a conversational panel. I may invite panelists to briefly respond or build on another colleagues' reflection. And also, before we begin our discussion, just a quick reminder to our participant that this discussion will be taking place in Arabic and English. So please use the interpretation channel available on the webinar platform down, just to follow the structure, the conversation on the language that you would like. And with that, I'm going to shift to Arabic now. And we'll start with أسامة. أسامة، أهلا وسهلا فيك أسامة حسن. شكرا لانضمامك لنا اليوم في هاي الندوة. أسامة، أنت صحفي، والسؤال الأول موجه لك يا عزيزي. قمت بإعداد العديد من التقارير استفاضت في موضوع المبادرات التعليم المجتمعي في مختلف أنحاء السودان حسب ما فهمنا. السؤال لك، ما الذي خلصت إليه بشأن آليات تنظيم هذه المبادرات، طريقة عملها، وكيف يتقاطع التعليم مع التحديات في المناطق اللي بتتولى فيها المجتمعات تنظيم أنفسها وشؤونها بنفسها. إذا ممكن تاخذنا هيك في رحلة خلال 5 دقائق بعد إذنك. تفضل يا أسامة.
شكرا لإتاحة الفرصة. أنا سعيد بكم، تحياتي لكم كلكم، أتمنى يكون صوتي مسموع.
تمام، تفضل.
طبعا السودان بلد مليء بالحروب في تاريخه الطويل، لكن حرب شاملة كهذه التي تدور الآن ما شهدها قبل ذلك، فهي أول المتضررين منها قطاع التعليم. أنا من خلال تغطيتي لتطورات الأوضاع التعليمية في السودان وجدت إنه التعليم تحول أو هو يعني أصبح ليس مجرد عملية أكاديمية أو رفاهية أو شيء خدمي. الحرب حاولت تؤطر ذلك يعني، لكن المجتمعات تجاوزت هذه النظرة وأصبحت تنظر للتعليم عبر المبادرات التعليمية بأنه أداة للمقاومة واسترداد مظاهر الحياة الطبيعية في مواجهة الحرب والفوضى والنزوع. المبادرات المحلية نفسها تجاوزت، أو المبادرات المحلية التعليمية تجاوزت افتتاح المدارس يعني، أو محاولات السلطات في بورسودان وفي نيالا إغلاق المدارس أو افتتاحها، وتجاوزت كل ذلك وأصبحت تفتتح مدارس خاصة بها تقوم هي عليها ماديا وعينيا ولوجستيا، ولا تنتظر قرارات من أعلى أو من أي جهة كانت. والناس بدوا يدرسون في الخلاوة، في المساجد، في الساحات العامة، في مراكز النزوح، ولذلك الناس أصبحوا لا ينتظرون حكومة أو سلطة، هم من يعلمون أبنائهم ويعلمون أطفالهم. والتجاوزوا القوالب القديمة التي تقول إنه عليك أن تفتتح مدرسة وهكذا، فأصبحوا يدرسون أبنائهم في كل مكان. أنا هنا أشير لنموذج رائد من نماذج المبادرات المجتمعية المحلية كما يحدث في غرب دارفور، وهي ولاية بعيدة عن المركز قديم، يعني في السابق كانت بعيدة عن مركز العاصمة الخرطوم، والآن في غرب دارفور المجالس التربوية المحلية هي التي تقوم بتدريس الأطفال وتقوم بالصرف على المعلمين، مع العلم أن أغلب المعلمين الذين يعملون في غرب دارفور الآن كانوا في السابق يتلقون مرتباتهم من السودان، وهذه المرتبات توقفت وهم الآن ليست لديهم مرتبات إلا التي تأتيهم من منظمات المجتمع المدني والمنظمات المحلية. هنالك تحديات تواجه هذه المبادرات، وهي أنه الأطفال في سن التعليم يتسربون خارج قاعات الدراسة، يذهبون نحو الزراعة وبعضهم يذهب نحو التجارة، ولكن الأخطر من كل هذا كل ذلك هم الذين يذهبون وينخرطون في القتال، يعني في واحدة من الجهتين المتقاتلتين، قوات الجيش أو قوات الدعم السريع. هذا هو الخطر الذي أو التحدي الأساسي الأبرز الذي يواجه المبادرات المحلية، سواء كان في غرب كردفان أو في غرب دارفور أو في ولاية الجزيرة. الآن يعني إذا نظرنا للواقع في ولاية الجزيرة نجد أن 90% من المعلمين الذين يعملون الآن في ولاية الجزيرة هم معلمون متطوعون. المعلمون المتطوعون وال10% فقط هم الذين يعني يتلقون الرواتب من الدولة وهم معلمون معينين، يعني لأن تعيين المعلمين توقف في ولاية الجزيرة تحديدا منذ عام 2013، وأصبحت تنوب بحمل هذه الأعباء المجتمعات المحلية. الناس من قوت يومهم يدفعون المرتبات المعلمين المتطوعين، يدفعون النسريات اليومية لتسيير المدارس وعبر آليات شعبية مجتمعية. إذا سميت في غرب دارفور مجالس تربوية، تسمى في ولاية الجزيرة المبادرات التعليمية. تختلف أسماؤها لكنها كلها تعمل في إطار واحد، وهو إعادة إحياء الأمل في التعليم، لأن الحرب أول المتضررين كما أسلفت من قيام الحرب هو قطاع التعليم. فلذلك يعني حين ننظر إلى ولاية كولاية الجزيرة، يعني هي كانت تحت سلطة الدعم السريع لعام ونصف. الآن هذا العام الثالث بعد استيلاء الجيش عليها، المعلمون الآن حتى الآن يصرفون مرتبات أقل من $20 يعني أو $30 في الحد الأدنى، فجلهم ترك المهنة وذهبوا لمهن أخرى يعني. لذلك كل الناس المعلمين الموجودين الآن هم يعني معلمين متطوعون أو متعاونين يعني. المبادرات المحلية أو المبادرات المجتمعية الخاصة التي تنشئها المجتمعات المحلية من أجل التعليم هي الآن سيدة الموقف في السودان، سواء قلنا في مناطق سيطرة الجيش أو في مناطق سيطرة قوات الدعم السريع يعني. نفس هذه المجموعات هي تعمل بمساعدات خارجية وبمساعدات داخلية من تلقاء نفسها، تعمل في افتتاح المدارس وتعمل في دفع المرتبات للمعلمين، وهي نفسها تعين معلمين تقوم هي بالدفع لهم يعني. فلذلك ينبغي أنه يعني دعم وتطوير هذه التجارب المحلية، لأن هذه التجارب يعني أنا كما أسلفت في بداية الأمر هي تجاوزت القرارات التي تتنزل من أعلى، هي نفسها أصبحت تضع الخطط. وفي غرب دارفور مثلا تحديدا المجالس التربوية الآن بدأت تعمل في منهج دراسي سمته المنهج المتكيف أو المنهج يعني متكيف مع الواقع، يدرسه الأطفال وهم يعني في حلهم وفي ترحالهم، لأنه ممكن اليوم هم مستقرون لكن غدا سيصبحون ناجحين، ولذلك يعني يدرسون بهذا المنهج هو نفسه المنهج أصبح منهج متجول. فهذه المبادرات هي الآن التي تسير وضع التعليم في السودان.
تمام أستاذ أسامة.
أتمنى لا أكون قد تجاوزت الزمن.
عظيم جدا، شكرا كثير جدا على هاي الإحاطة، وإحنا شاكرين فعلا لك هاي المداخلة. راح نرجع حيكون في عندنا فقرة سؤال وجواب، وبدعو الجميع لطرح الأسئلة في صندوق التشات خلال هاي الندوة. راح يكون في عندنا مساحة لمعالجة هاي الأسئلة بعد انتهاء النقاش مع الزملاء. الآن ننطلق لك يا أستاذ أبو ذر عثمان، وأنت تعمل في غرف الطوارئ والاستجابة في دارفور. سعيدين جدا بتواجدك معنا اليوم، وأهلا وسهلا فيك. يعني تعمل غرف الطوارئ والاستجابة في دارفور على تنسيق الجهود، هاي الجهود لحشد دعم المجتمع الدولي من خلال مراكز التنسيق والتمكين المحلي، إذا ممكن استخدمت الاسم المصطلح اللي بتستخدموه أنتم في السودان. خليني أسألك أبو ذر بعد إذنك، يعني شو أبرز النجاحات الملموسة اللي حققها المجلس في وجهة نظرك، وأيضا كمان شو التحديات اللي واجهتكم في هذا الصدد؟ 5 دقائق تفضل.
اوكي، شكرا جزيلا. يعني I wanted to start by يعني بقصة. يعني أنا بتمنى إنه أنا أبدأ كلامي بقصة صغيرة.
أكيد
يعني
أبو ذر، اسمك بس إذا بتستخدم اللغة نلتزم في اللغة العربية أو الإنجليزية عشان الترجمة. شكرا كثير جدا.
فأنا حابدأ بقصة صغيرة. بتذكر إنه وأنا في رابع ابتدائي، يعني في رابع ابتدائي كنت بقرأ في مدرسة اسمها الغربية الأساسية في مدينة الضعين في شرق دارفور تحديدا. بتذكر إنه إحنا كنا، يعني ده قبل الحرب، دي في التسعينات، أنا كبير شوية. قبل الحرب عشان نصل المدرسة في فصل الخريف تحديدا كان في خور كبير كده قدام المدرسة. الخور ده لايك يعني بيجي مع الخريف دائما. فالمشكلة الأساسية بالنسبة لنا نحن في عمرنا ذاك، وفي حتة ما فيها مكان إنك تتعلم فيه السباحة، أو ما في مسبح عشان أنت تتعلم السباحة أو بحر، أنت كان مضطر إنك أنت تسبح، تقطع الخور عشان تقدر تصل المدرسة وأنت بدعوم. وده في التسعينات، وما كانت في حرب في دارفور تحديدا، يعني أو في المنطقة اللي أنا عايش فيها، اللي هي المنطقة ده بتاعت الضعين. التعليم مع قبل الحرب إنه الفوارق التنموية الحاصلة في السودان كله، في شماله وفي شرقه وفي غربه، خلت إنه العملية التعليمية تكون صعبة بالنسبة للسودانيين والسودانيات عموما، يعني من الاستقلال لليلة يعني. ففي أزمة حقيقية بتواجه التعليم، خصوصا هسي في الحرب. أنا بصفة عملي كمتطوع ل4 سنين هسي من بداية الحرب للآن في مجلس تنسيق العمل القاعدي غرف الطوارئ في دارفور ولكل السودان، بحكم موقعي في الاتصال الخارجي لغرف طوارئ السودان. بفتكر إنه واحدة من أهم النجاحات حققتها غرف الطوارئ، إن إحنا ما قاعدين نقول إنها هي اسمها بالنسبة لنا إنها اسمها هي مجموعات العون التضامن Mutual Aid Group. ما قاعدين نسميها initiative، لأنها هي عندها شكلها structure تنظيمي، عندها structure بتاع تنسيق قوي لليلة في 14 ولاية تقريبا. لليلة نحن في كل السودان عبارة عن 10843 مجموعة قاعدية، غرفة طوارئ قاعدية. في دارفور تحديدا في 921 غرفة بتاع الطوارئ قاعدية، وديل بيقدموا خدمات في كل شيء، من الصحة، من الفود سيكيورتي، حد التعليم. افتكر واحدة من أهم النجاحات اللي حققناها هي اللوكلايزيشن في حد نفسه، في إنه الموارد اللي بيتم حشدها سواء كان من المجتمع الدولي أو من منظمات المجتمع المدني السودانية، الموارد دي اللي بيقرر منو يصرفها هم المواطنين في حد ذاتهم. يعني المجتمعات هي اللي بتحدد إنه التدخل بتاعه يكون هو عبارة عن شنو. دي واحد من أهم التحديات اللي مثلا ممكن نستعرضها هسه في تقرير يا أيمن، لو ممكن تشاركه.
If we can share the screen, please, Rebecca. Thanks.
في التقرير ديت، هو التقرير ده and then you can يعني تمشي على السلايد yes. في التقرير ده بيوضح لنا انه شنو اللي قدرنا نحققه يعني احنا من 24 ل 2026 يعني في قرى في طوارئ السودان، تحديدا في التدخلات اللي عندها علاقه بالتعليم. البرنامج ده قدر انه يشتغل من ديسمبر 24 لحد الليله في 14 ولايه بميزانيه قدرها 880 الف دولار. كان يوم ممكن تمشي احمد في التقرير ب 880 الف دولار، واللي استفادوا منه حوالي 173,659 فرد. حتى الآن التدخلات دي كانت متنوعة جدا حسب احتياج كل مجتمع، من تأهيل المدارس، الفصول، توفير المواد التعليمية، المقاعد، دعم المعلمين، المتطوعين، دعم الامتحانات، الوجبات المدرسية والتعليم البديل، بالإضافة لحاجات عندها تدخلات عندها علاقة بالووش، بتوفير المياه للمدارس ديت والبنية التحتية المدرسية بشكل عام. لكن أهم يعني حاجة بالنسبة لنا والتجربة اللي أثبتتها غرف الطوارئ، إنه الجهات المحلية دي قادرة على تحديد الاحتياجات بسرعة وتصميم تدخلات مناسبة للسياق المحلي وتنفيذ رغم ظروف الحرب والنزوح وانعدام الأمن وارتفاع الأسعار ومشاكل الوصول والخدمات. وده مهم جدا لأن التعليم في السودان حاليا لا يمكن النظر إليه فقط كقطاع تعليمي، هو أيضا مرتبط بالحماية ومرتبط بالصحة النفسية والاجتماعية والاستقرار وقدرة الأطفال والأسر على استعادة جزء من حياتهم الطبيعية. وفي نفس الوقت التجربة وضحت لنا بعض التحديات المهمة. الظروف في الميدان بتتغير باستمرار، سواء الأسعار أو الأمن أو طرق النقل والوصول. لذلك إنه التمويل التقليدي بميزانيات ومواعيد ثابتة ده ما بيكون مناسب للمبادرات المجتمعية ولينا نحن في ERRS. وبنوصي بوضوح بانه لازم يكون في تمويل مرن، تمويل ما بيسألك من انك انت مسجل وين. فياتو مفوضية من المفوضيات في السودان اللي فيه 4 مفوضيات لليلة، من مفوضية هاك لسارهو للمفوضية بتاعت عبد الواحد محمد نور لمفوضية الحركة الشعبية الشمال. وبرضو انه هنا عنده علاقة برضو بالواقعية في مدة التنفيذ، لأنه البرامج اللي بتتصمم بعدم مشاركة المجتمعات لها وخصوصا في موضوع التعليم إنها هي في الوقت الحالي في الحرب ما واقعية كفاية، ما واقعية لا من حيث التنفيذ، لأنه الميزانيات المخصصة لها في الوضع الطارئ ده كم، التغيير اللي في الأسعار اللي قاعد يحصل يعني، والخطط البديلة دي كلها هي ما بتكون بتراعي لها بشكل أساسي. كذلك في حاجة كبيرة للاستثمار في المعلمين والمتطوعين اللي آمنوا بأنهم هم عايزين يتطوعوا دير ويكونوا موجودين بيساعدوا في أنه العملية التعليمية دي تمشي لقدام. لو بس نزلنا لتحت شوية يا أسامة يا أيمن، عايز أكده هنا أنه القدرة بتاعت المجتمعات في ان ايوه هي دي. انزل تحت مثلا، تحت لسه في صفحه فيها عدد الستيت.
ممكن في اقل من 30 ثانيه ابوزار بعد.
اوكي هي can you go up please up yes here. لو عاينا هنا بنلقى انه الفندنج اللي جاء للمبادرات دي، قبل ما نخش في انه هم ديل الشركاء الدوليين اللي دعمونا في غرف الطوارئ. بس قبل ديت وإشارة لكلام أسامة إنه كل المبادرات التعليمية ديت هي أصلا initiative by الكوميونتي. غرف الطوارئ هي دعمت المجتمعات ديت. اوريدي قاعد يكون في تمويل محلي من المجتمعات نفسها، وبكون في مؤتمرات تربوية من المجتمعات نفسها في إنها تقدر تساعد العملية التعليمية في مكانها. الفكرة من إنه يكون في شيء فيه الدونرز ديل إنهم هم يستخدموا واحدة من أهم الميكانيزمات، من أهم الطرق بتاعت التمويل للمجموعات، اللي هو الدايركت ميكانيزم فند، اللي بسهل للمجتمعات ديت إنها تقدر تتلقى أموال، وفي نفس الوقت تقرر هي بحد نفسها كيف تقدر تصرف الأموال دي، سواء كان على التعليم ولا غيره. فالطريقة المشكلة الحقيقية اللي بتواجهنا في مجلس تنسيق العمل القاعدي في غرف الطوارئ هي الطريقة بتاعت التمويل في حد ذاتها. هي دي واحدة من أكبر المشاكل الموجودة لليلة. من هنا أنا غاية بوصي كل الناس إنهم يحاولوا يعملوا مناصرة قوية لإنه سواء كان ERR أو ERR إنه يتلقوا تمويل عشان يستمروا في عملهم ده من غير بيروقراطية كبيرة في القصة بتاعت الإجراءات. شكرا جزيلا، آسف على الإطالة.
أبدا، شكرا كثير يا أبوزار على هاي المشاركة. فعلا يعني شاركنا العديد من التحديات، أيضا كمان الإنجازات المرتبطة بتعزيز هاي الاستجابة على الصعيد المحلي وقيادة المجتمعات المحلية لهاي الجهد. شكرا كثير لك، وأكيد الرابط متاح للتقرير اللي ممكن مشاركته أيضا مع الجميع في صندوق الشات. والآن يعني I'm going راح أتكلم باللغة الإنجليزية الآن. So now we have heard from our two Arabic speaker panelists. And I would like to thank both of them for their contributions. And now I will hand over to my colleague Sharia, who will lead the next part of the panel discussion in English with Heiba, Rihab, and Yasir. Over to you, Sharia. Thanks.
Many thanks, Ayman, and thank you so much to Osama and Abuzar for those really interesting insights from the grassroots where they work. Over to our next panelist, Heiba Osman from the Sadagaat organization, which is a national organization that has a really significant reach across Sudan and does a lot of important work in education. And our question for you is, Heiba, Sadagaat is a national organization currently working on education issues with significant geographic reach across the country. What challenges has Sadagaat faced working on education, and how do you see Sudanese civil society relating to community education initiatives? Over to you, Heiba.
Okay, thanks everyone. My first challenge we will address the divided and political environment. Regarding every area, we work in different security situation and different authorizer in charge, and different culture and different situation for the children, because Sadagaat working in children out of school. This is, I guess, first challenge, the divided and political environment regarding the security situation and different authority and different culture. We're working on it. The second is regarding the budget, and the budget now is very small for the national organization and the community organization. I guess because the cut-off fund from some INGOs and other. And then I guess the money in some time not goes to the right person or on he goes based on wrong way, because when we transfer or the journey of the one bound, he travel how to travel to teacher is very roughly not the same we will get from the donor and UN agency and international agencies and national NGOs, and last go to the community or the teachers. The third, the teacher pay now is not enough, and some teacher takes the education as a job and work into another job. And in some area, the teacher is working as voluntary. First, I guess the balance between child protection rules and the situation who are working on it, and the inclusive. Children with disability and children in rural area need more programs rather than children in the city. The need is different and very variation between it. The last, I guess, some program for out of school, I guess, is the curriculum or the certificate of accreditation. Now, some area RSF and is working on 2 certificates. This is for the national organ is very difficult issue, and I guess no skill program enough for the children or the adolescent. The situation in Sudan is very difficult, and some parents need to get the children to work to get money. When we work go to the money to the work, we need the skill and don't have any skill to do it. I guess, but for Sadagaat organization, I guess have some message. One volunteer teacher take in turn social during and came days without enough money, emergency response room and some area to work in education, but not register and not need to support in governance and other to get this money. I need main support. I guess the national organization have registered, but not get enough money to work on the ground smoothly without regulation, without other challenge from the government in some area. Yeah. Have another time or enough?
Thank you,
Yeah.
Heiba. Thank you for your comments, and I'm sure we'll get to discuss much more during the Q&A, but many thanks for your thoughts and perspectives and for shining light on some of the challenges that Sadagaat is facing in its work in education. Moving on, our next panelist is Rihab Abdalla Osman from Save the Children in Sudan. Rihab, our question to you is, Save the Children has been active both before and after the war, working with parent-teacher associations in schools across Sudan. How have these partnerships worked? What role should INGOs play in supporting locally led education initiatives in Sudan? And how can programming be adapted to ensure local initiatives' priorities take the lead in this work while supporting in terms of capacity and resources? Over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much to INEE, and thank you to ERICC for this important research, sheds the light on the community-led initiative in Sudan. Actually, your question is like 3 questions in one, so I'll divide the question to make sure that I'm answering properly. So, in terms of how the partnership have worked before with the PTAs, the Parent-Teacher Association, and different community structure, I can say that this partnership is a kind of embedded in all our program, in all our education program, from long years before the conflicts and during the conflict and currently as well. This partnership has been a kind of working very well across all the movement, across all Sudan, and to shed the light on some of the enabling factor why this partnership with the PTAs and different community structures been working very well. This related to the way that we're addressing the community. Actually, the community is a genuine partner for Save the Children. We're working with them from the initiation of the programs, the design of the program. So they are genuine partner, their needs, their gaps being reflected by themselves and being taken forward through the designs. And they continue to support the program, kick off the program implementations, and we make sure that their voices continue to be heard through very strong accountability mechanism on the ground. This accountability mechanism has different approaches that enable everyone to share the voice in the community. And also in terms of the structure, the community mobilization role, the community engagement is part of the project staff. That means in all our education program, you will find designated role to support the community engagement. So in a nutshell, the PTA's structure, as well as later we introduce the mother group structures as a genuine partner for the education program across the movement, from the initiation, design, implementation, and also the feedback for the future improvement on the program. Coming to the second part of the question, what role should INGO play to support locally led initiative in Sudan? Yeah, actually, we need to identify very important thing here. The Save the Children, and I believe many other INGO also work closely with this PTA structure in education programs, mother group, different community structure on the ground, and for education in particular, the main structure is the PTAs. The role is being delayed before is to capacitate these PTAs to better support the school and promote education in the community. And this could have three types of support. Start by establishing PTAs if they are not there, reactivate these PTAs if they are there, but they need some support to be capacitated and to be reactivating. And recently, during the conflict, we introduced a new mechanism of revising the current structure of PTAs. Why we're coming with this revision role of this PTA structure, working hand by hand with this community? Because, for example, some school is receiving newcomer, new IDP, so this PTA structure is need to, to speak to all, to represent all the children. So, for example, in some areas, we revise the PTAs and include more members from IDP's community to be part of these PTAs. This is across the states that we're working in. And also, the role is to capacitate the PTAs in terms of their capacity to support the promoting the education, the enrollment, all those parts. However, we need to admit one thing. During this conflict, the PTA's roles become more strategic. They stepped in to play some role of the government, some role of the Minister of Education, some role of the local education offices because of the gap of this structure during the conflict and still in some areas. So in a nutshell, they restore the education in all this community. They start by non-formal education and they restore this education. So the role of the INGO, Inclusive the Children, it has been upgraded to meet the needs of the community. For instance, before we're supporting the BTS through help them to develop good school improvement plan, to provide them with a school grant, to build the schools, to rehabilitate the school. We move forward, for example, to provide them with cash-based transfer to implement a school feeding program. And currently we're moving further to provide them with a small grant to support the furniture, to support the seating. So in a nutshell, the role of INGO should be upgraded and uplifted to support the need of the community, to support the new roles that the BTAs stepped in to take care of. And I'll give you example. For example, in central Darfur. The community is the PTA, where the PTAs were the main bodies that restore the education there, and you approach even the INGO for the support, and also work with the local authority to free the school from IDPs, and with the support of INGO, they managed to take this to camp and to make the school available to restore education. And also in El-Gadarif, these schools being used as IDPs and as IDP shelter. So the community in El-Gadarif, they like demonstrated very strong and good example in rehabilitating the schools. And if when we compare the cost that they used to establish or to build new classrooms, latrine, water supplies, is 50% less than the contractor-led program. That means the community has the capacity to do very strong and very solid work in the community. But the capacity of this community is different. Is different. So this is the area that INGO should look at and should learn and try to provide more resources to the community, to the PTAs, to lead in various areas more than before the conflict. And this is a kind of very important things, and we have very strong example for across Sudan. At least from I can say from 10 states, we have very strong and solid experience on how this PTAs managed to resolve a lot of questions and a lot of problem in education. And last example I can bring from Jazeera. In my last visit to Jazeera, even they came with very innovative ideas. As INGO and as Save the Children, we are learning from their innovative ideas. For example, I think my colleague mentioned this volunteer and the gap in teaching capacity. So in one of these villages in Jazeera, the community, the PTAs, discussed with the Ministry of Education and collected the retired teacher who have the capacity to teach again, and they brought all those retired teachers to their village, provide them with accommodation and with very good salary, and all those teachers are retired teachers with the capacity to teach, overcoming the challenge of capacitated teacher or trained teacher. And this is one of very innovative ideas. I say that we picked and we discussed with the Ministry of Education, and we put one criteria. If you want to have a volunteer teacher, if you have a retired teacher with a capacity to teach, why not to bring a retired teacher to the school and to put attachment program for volunteer teacher with this retired teacher? And we got this idea for the community. So even this community now is PTA and the community structure supporting education, they are really innovative. They overcoming the challenge with different way. It's a chance for all INGO to learn from. The last things in related to this question is regarding to program adaptations. Yes, program adaptation is needed, with the main objective, more resources to be channeled to the BTS structure, more resources to be channeled to this mothers group structure, and different type of capacity. Because this BTS structure is not only promoting education, not promoting enrollment, not promoting the rehabilitation, they also adding a great value to this community through supporting the social cohesion in the community. School has become a place that's supporting the social cohesion, supporting the coexistence, because the narrative of demographic situation in Sudan has changed. So we need the role to be, expanded to this social cohesion part. Also, this BTS is becoming a kind of negotiator. They're negotiating school opening, they're negotiating the restoring of education. So they need to be skilled in decision-making, negotiation skills, and also they need to be a kind of skilled labor. So more integration program is needed. So for example, in education to be integrated with FSL, this BTS to create a kind of youth group, this youth group to be a kind of a group to be trained in, to be skilled labor in construction, in rehabilitation. So they do the thing with the standard. Also, organizations like Save the Children to look at those community BTAs in different community and different capacity, and to enable learning between these community. So in a nutshell, a lot could be done: adaptation, integrations, learning, And I'm really proud of what the community has been doing in Sudan. I think without this community, without the BTA's solid and strong role, strong stand for education, education might not restart in many places. So from this, platform, I'm really, would like to appreciate your role, to send message that you're there, you're the one who's supporting the education. We're just back up you, but you're the one who did a great job to make sure the children is not being missed out forever. So I think the community is structure, in particular the BTAs, need to be capacitated in different way. And finally, this research, the ERICC research and the findings shared, it shared some strong recommendation, some area, challenging area. Also, we're going to look at this and try to reflect this in our program. And I hope I answered the question. Thank you. Thank you
That
again.
was fantastic. Thank you so much, Rihab. I think it was such a comprehensive answer to our question, and I think you've shared so many helpful reflections and stories and ideas for our community that's gathered here. So thank you very much for that response. And we really look forward to hearing more of your thoughts during the Q&A session afterward. And for the meantime, we will move on to our final panelist for the day, Yasir El-Hag, who is the Local Education Group Coordinator in Sudan and is also based in UNESCO Sudan. And our question for you, Yasir, is what are the implications of community initiatives for the humanitarian sector and humanitarian coordination structures as we move towards greater localization? How should the humanitarian sector be interacting with community initiatives and at what levels? Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Shreya. Hello, everyone. Happy to participate in this webinar. First of all, we need to acknowledge the fact that these community initiatives have been there even before war, playing a very important role in different parts of Sudan. Especially in areas where we have less development, areas that were affected by conflicts and disasters. Now, after war, we've seen how these community initiatives, how they have changed, how they have assumed more roles, how they are becoming more and more supportive, and how the scale at which they or by which they kind of support the education in the community is becoming larger and larger. At the same time, when we look at the reports of all initiatives to support education in Sudan, usually we find main challenges of access, reach out. So for all humanitarian actors, I guess the community initiatives can provide an answer to this kind of last mile question in terms of reach out, in terms of access. And in addition to this, they also provide or they are capable of providing more than just channeling kind of funds or support just implementation of initiatives that are offered to their communities. We just heard from Abuzar that some of these community initiatives manage to convene workshops, conferences, and get involved in a kind of more technical work. Personally, I have been in contact with community initiative in East Darfur, and they managed to collect data from the ground to provide the information and details that I don't think could have been provided by any other means except these community initiatives because they were in the ground. So as you can see, they are capable of playing a greater role. They are capable of doing more and more. For humanitarian actors, I think they need to consider supporting these community initiatives, offer training, so that when they get involved in, for example, training teachers, organizing conferences, conducting needs analysis, collecting data, they can do that in a more kind of like accurate way. Also, they can be for humanitarian access. I guess they can be involved in planning, because if you look at any planning, most of the planned projects usually find them kind of like top down. So they can provide this kind of like bottom up planning, because I guess their inputs will be very key to understanding the context. We have now different contexts in Sudan. We have different situations. So this is why I guess if we support these community initiatives, we can make the planning for the education projects more responsive to the actual needs in the ground. Another thing is, as Rihab said, I personally realized this, all community members who are involved in this community initiative, usually you find them that they have developed a kind of like more awareness around peace, importance of peaceful coexistence, child protection issues, and this is very key to building peace in these communities. Another important thing, the community initiatives are not there just to channel funds. They are also a kind of like source of fund and support for the education initiatives for schools in their areas. We saw from what we hear just now how they supported the salaries of the teachers. I saw them in East Darfur. They supported school feeding programs. In conclusion, I would like to say that we need to put more trust in these community initiatives. If you look at the funds that have been allocated so far for these community initiatives, you will see that these funds are still, I wouldn't say like small, but not very big funds. And of course, we are not. I am not against this. This is reasonable, because I guess humanitarian actors are testing the grounds right now. But I would like to encourage all humanitarian actors to try to invest more in building the capacities of these community initiatives, and try to kind of like scale up the way by which they implement through these community initiatives. And I'm very sure that if we try to invest in these community initiatives, they are going to address kind of like very challenging problems that we haven't been able not to resolve, but to address to this level of extent where we feel that, or we can confidently say that Now we are implementing in that area. Now we are supporting children in that area. And finally, I would like to say that also for sustainability, they are key elements for any initiatives to be sustainable in different parts of Sudan, especially these parts where we have challenges of access and reach out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yasir, and to all of our panelists. This was an incredibly rich set of reflections and insights that you've all shared with us today. And we have about 15 minutes left for an audience Q&A. We have some really interesting questions that have come in the Q&A box. So very quickly, I will hand back to you, Ayman, to just direct some of the questions towards our panelists, and hopefully it's a rich discussion. Thank you so much.
Many thanks, Sharia, and many thanks to our panelists. Really insightful, contextual information. We really appreciate your contribution. And now we have the Q&A session, and thanks for all the attendees who keep posing the questions in the chat box. We have a number of questions. The first question comes from Najwa Omar. Then the question is directed to basically to the international organizations as well as like research like ERICC. And thanks Rebecca for coming in. So the question is, with the continued deterioration of the teacher salaries and the delay in payments, some teachers are leaving the profession itself, or moving to private schools, or work in hourly work, while some communities are relying on local initiatives to support teachers and sustain education. How can international organizations, how can research organizations support the documentation and the evaluation of these community-based models, help transform successful experience into sustainable and scalable solutions, while ensure that local Sudanese expertise and experiences are meaningfully included in the design of these solutions? This question from Najwa Omar, who is an education specialist in Sudan. So I'll leave the question to you, potentially Rebecca and Rihab, to answer.
Thank you for this question. There's a lot of layers to it. I don't know if I'll be able to cover all of them, so I'm excited that Rihab will also be answering. But one thing that I've seen one word that struck me when listening to it was the question of scalability. And I just want to quickly say here that I actually don't think there is a way to scale support for community initiatives in any meaningful way. That the reason that they operate is because they're at their core localized and they're relying on community trust. And the further away you get and the more you scale up, the more that trust is tested and the more challenging it is to coordinate in a meaningful way. So in that sense, I think that this is a moment and this is a particular issue where the international community needs to adapt to the initiatives rather than the initiatives adapting to the international community. And that will be key for the international community and for whatever support is given to education initiatives in Sudan. And this links in to the question of salaries and who is a teacher, in the sense that because this is a volunteer teaching force, essentially, it shapes who becomes a teacher and who can be a teacher. Rihab mentioned the role of retired teachers, and that's something that showed up again and again as I spoke with people involved at Khalawi as well as at revived government schools, where I spoke to someone teaching in a khalwa, and he was like, yeah, I taught in a government school for 20 years. This overlap in the role of, now in addition to the retired teachers, you have a lot of young people who, the people who can volunteer are either retired or tend to not have families and quite as many responsibilities, because people with children and families need more resources for their families. And that really shapes who is a teacher right now in Sudan in some meaningful ways. That really links into this question. With that, I want to hand it over to Rihab because I don't have the answer for all of this question.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you, Negro, for these questions. I would like to highlight this this area regarding how to transfer this successful experience into sustainable and to scale up this. I will just shed the light on experience that we have been doing in one of our programs that as part of the activity, we have included what we call BTS forum. And this is even before the conflict. And in the BTS forum, we're bringing the BTS from different schools in one forum across the locality, and then to the state level. So we're sharing the successful experience across the BTS. And the BTS were the one who developed the agenda of this forum, coming with, even by the way, during that time, they did a kind of research, and they came with paper. They wrote paper, and they came with paper to that forums. This is before the conflict. So building on that legacy, we need to expand these forums, even using different modes. For example, the online platform, using, for example, the capacity of organizations like Save the Children being in 15 or 13 states. That means we can invite these PTAs to share their experience across the state. For example, we noticed that in Gadarif, the BTS, they're very good in constructing, in the construction and building schools, while this is not the case in Central Darfur. While in Central Darfur, they're really good in negotiating the school reopening, negotiating, for example, moving the IDPs out from school. So if you look at this, and we will be different this experience in one picture or in one paper, you will find they complement each other in terms of gap, in terms of knowledge, in terms of the capacity. So I think in our program, we're going to go back to this BTS forum to include in all our coming. We already include in some of our proposals currently we're writing, and we try to look at different approaches, documentation, have this as also brings the advocacy part into this, the ACCM department, the advocacy communication media department, into it, to make it a kind of something scaled up and shared widely. This is one of the things that we can do. Over. Thank you.
No, many thanks, Rihab and Rebecca. That's very insightful. I have a number of questions, but I'm just also aware about the time. We've got 5 minutes left, and I gotta prioritize one of these questions, which is really, I'm gonna pose it to all the panelists here as a takeaway from this webinar before I hand over to Sharia. So the question is, like, considering that the situation in Sudan, the ongoing crisis, conflict, if there is one key message from one of each actor here, like a recommendation or takeaway that you can give to a stakeholder who works in education, how to strengthen community-led education response, what this recommendation or takeaway would be? I'll start with you, Abuzar, please.
Thank you, أيمن. I think أنا بعتقد إنه واحدة من أهم الحاجات الريكومنديشن قبل الستيك هولدر للسودانيين والسودانيات المشتغلين في موضوع التعليم. يعني الكوردينيشن between الانيشيتيف between الناس الشغاله فعليا في الجراوند في موضوع التعليم. يعني خلوا يكون عنده كوردينيشن كويس، كوردينيشن قايم على انهم هم ما منفذين، هم شركاء اساسيين في انجاح العمليه التعليميه اللي بيتم دعمها او تمويلها من قبلكم. يعني كيف انه نقدر نعاين انه الانيشيتيف ديل ما هم بس مجرد ناس انيشيتيف محتاجين لها خبرات، محتاجين انه نعمل لهم ديفلوب. الناس ديل ما محتاجين لحاجات كثيره، محتاجين انه كوميونيكيشن جست فور ذا ستيكهولدر.
ريكومنديشن واحده بعد يس انتقل للاستاذ ياسر. ريكومنديشن واحده بس.
اوكي، كيف انه يخلوا انه الانظمه يعني الطريقه بتاعت الفند اكثر مرونه، مراعيه للسياق بتاع المجموعات، مراقيه لقدرتهم. هم عندهم انظمه بتاعت اكاونتبيلتي، عندهم القدره دي وابروف الحاجه دي في ال4 سنين دي. كيف انه المجتمع الدولي يقدر يكون عنده ثقه اكثر في إنه يدعم المجموعات دي من غير ما يكون في بيروقراطية إدارية كثيرة تضغط المجموعات دي من إنها تؤدي عملها. شكرا جزيلا.
حديث رائع يا أبوزار، التنسيق والثقة. أستاذ ياسر، إذا ممكن أعطيك ب 30 ثانية بعد إذنك، أعطينا هيك ريكومنديشن واحدة من طرفك.
Yeah, I would say like capacity building is very important for these community initiatives. And capacity building is not only training, it's also like how to make these structures more formal so that they can work in a way that's going to be more proactive, more involved in planning, in just the with support. They won't just see themselves as people who are working just to respond to like emergency situation, because this emergency situation has been there now for 3 years. So they should be supported so that they can move forward and have a kind of like more development component in what they are going to do. Thank you.
Thank you Yasser, really appreciated. أسامة, if you can give us تفضل لو بعد إذنك في جملة واحدة بس، شو في نصيحة ممكن توجهها لقطاع التعليم لدعم التعليم المجتمعي في جملة واحدة
شكرا
بعد
يا أيمن،
عن
شكرا.
دقيقة.
أنا عايز إذا عندي نصيحة أقولها إنه على المجتمع الدولي أو المانحين إنه يعني يركزوا في دعم المبادرات التعليمية بصورة مباشرة دون يعني النظر للإجراءات البيروقراطية، لأن التعليم الآن يتحول من إنه هو هدف في حد ذاته، أصبح عبر المبادرات المجتمعية المحلية لمحرك للتعافي المجتمعي الشامل. فإذا كان يعني
تمام.
وصيتي هي إنه شكرا.
تعزيز التمويل الدولي للمجتمعات المحلية. هبة، في جملة بعد إذنك.
I guess built upon the reporting who came from the community and civil society and NGOs to get in the roadmap and to get the resource upon the need and the challenge who will face in the community and the civil society.
Thank you so much, Hiba. أستاذة رحاب, please, one sentence.
I think everything being said, just to be more closer to this structure, work closely with them in every step of the program design and implementation.
So grateful for each one of you. Thank you, Abuzar. Thank you, Rihab. Thank you, Yasir. Thank you, Hiba. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Osama. شكرا كثير لكم. With that, I'm going to hand over to Sharia to close off this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Ayman, and a repeated thank you to all of our fabulous panelists, and my apologies to all of the ones who asked us questions. I'm going to try and get you those answers in our follow-up if I can. Hopefully we can coordinate with the panelists to try and still answer some of those pending audience questions. But thank you so much for your engagement, your attendance, and especially for all of the expert and nuanced and thoughtful reflections that our panelists have shared with us today. I originally wanted to showcase a few key resources, including the research report, but I will make sure that this is included in the follow-up email to the webinar as we are now at time. But I just wanted to flag that this report, the resource that Rebecca and team have worked on, is on the INEE website. And the recording of this webinar will also be posted on the INEE website. So please do be on the lookout for those resources and for the research report. And we really, really hope that this was a meaningful and a productive webinar for all of you. And once again, with many thanks to our panelists, thank you for coming, and we will end the event here. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.